Back in the 2000s, when you bought a gangster game, a crime game like Grand Theft Auto, The Getaway, Mafia, Godfather, Saints Row, you got a gritty, realistic, dark, and very violent, mature video game. A game that took itself seriously, a game that you could get invested in, a game that had a very immersive story and mechanics, at least for the time. What made these games so special is that as a kid playing them in the 2000s when I shouldn't have, they felt very adult, and I felt like I shouldn't be playing this. This feels like an 18 plus game, like adults only. It felt like I was in a strip club or a legal casino. Like it felt edgy, you know what I mean? And that's what attracted me to it. Like it didn't feel like a kid's game. It didn't feel like a kid's toy. This felt real, you know, gritty, dark, and a bit depressing. And you look at games from this era, Grand Theft Auto 4, The Getaway, they're so bleak, they're so grey, and they're so miserable. But this is reality, ladies and gentlemen. Crime in real life is scary, and you should feel intimidated. And it's not something that should be glamorized. Exactly. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like a little bit of Pitbull. You know what I mean? That sort of, I own this nightclub and I'm like Scarface type of deal. I do like that. Vice City, for example, is very much about the power and the fantasy of being a criminal in Miami in the 1980s. But I really do miss these sort of gritty, dark sort of takes on the crime genre in video games. And what made these games special is that they were so much more deeper than just run, gun, take out enemy bases, basic gameplay mechanics. The mechanics were trying to immerse you in the world. You had cinemas to go to, you had theatres to watch. The music on the radio was like realistic, everything. The driving, the games were trying to immerse you in a world that could be real. Now, when you go and play a game today, it has Fortnite graphics, it has flying cars, it has futuristic things that don't exist in reality. The games feel like kids' toys. Like you look at the new Saints Row, I'm sure it's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel like an 18 plus game. It doesn't feel like a gang game. It just feels like a kid's toy. But it's 18 plus, it's got a few swearing in, maybe a bit of blood. But it's not really a mature gangster game anymore. And even GTA Online is full of flying cars and all kinds of silly stuff. And I really miss that gritty sort of realism we got. And the games were so much deeper, you know. I would much rather have like a character act like a real person within the story, feel like a real person, move like a real person. You know, when you get shot, he should limp and cry out in pain, and all this kind of like realism made the game immersive. Like you felt like you were in New York in GTA 4, the way Nico moved, the way he got shot and would react to it was like a real person. And even the gameplay felt deep. Like you didn't just feel like you were playing a game, you could get immersed in the game. You felt like you were Nico Bellic. And although GTA 5 is a little bit more light-hearted, the first person mode is really immersive. You feel like you're in Los Santos. That's what I want from a crime game. That's what crime games used to be about. Realism. You know, the immersion of it. And we're losing that, man. We're losing it. It's just silly stuff, like for kids now. And I want a proper 18 plus gritty game. You know what I mean? Where I play as a really depressed person who turns to crime out of no choice, or maybe they're just sick of life, maybe they're just depressed and they snap and decide to be a drug dealer. You know, a real gritty story, you know. Imagine Breaking Bad, but a game. The same story, nothing too silly, nothing too out of this world. You play as Jesse Pinkman. Maybe he's got a meth addiction and he's trying to overcome it. He's young, he's unsure of himself, he's a bit lost. I love a gritty, dark character like that. A game that takes itself seriously. I mean, 8 Mile, Eminem, 8 Mile, brilliant movie. Imagine that as a game. That'd be fantastic, you know? But no, we've got to have, silly guns out of Toy Story or whatever, cartoony graphics that looks like a kid's cartoon, millennial humour, hashtag lol, hashtag that's so relatable, cringe, like, I want a gritty crime game, and unfortunately, I think Grand Theft Auto 6 won't be like this because GTA Online, like I said, full of flying cars, all kinds of silly stuff like that. Now they're going to make it politically correct, so it means it's going to have a lot of virtual signaling, and it's not going to be realistic because it's going to be pandering, and it's not going to be edgy anymore because people might get offended. So is that going to be a kids game? Is GTA 6 going to have cartoony graphics and over the top guns and flying motorbikes and flying cars and futuristic cities and all kinds of silly stuff? I don't want that, I want a gritty game. We're not getting them, and I miss them. So that's a rant. Do you miss gritty, dark, crime thriller games? Crime games that made you feel like a criminal, that made you feel like you were in the game. Do you know what I mean? I miss that. Do you? Let me know in the comments. See you later.